We all know home-cooked meals are so much better for you, but you don't always have time to pull it off. But with HelloFresh handling all the meal planning, shopping, and most of the prep, it's easier than ever to get dinner on the table quick and painless. Plans change and life gets busy. That's why HelloFresh lets you easily customize your delivery from week to week. Tailor everything to your schedule by adjusting your delivery date, or just skip a week when you're not able to cook at home. Between being sick, travel, and generally just running around, I've saved time and energy by using HelloFresh's quick, easy, and delicious recipes. A recent cavatappi beef ragu with Parmesan and parsley was a hit with me and my family, and I was able to put together the home-cooked meal in just about 20 minutes. For free breakfast for life, go to hellofresh.com/free404media. One free breakfast item per box while subscription is active. That's free breakfast for life just by going to hellofresh.com/free404media. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.
Hello, and welcome to the 404 Media podcast, where we bring you unparalleled access to hidden worlds, both online and IRL. 404 Media is a journalist-founded company and needs your support to subscribe. Go to 404media.co. As well as bonus content every single week, subscribers also get access to additional episodes where we respond to their best comments. Gain access to that content at 404media.co. I'm your host, Joseph, and with me, it's a miracle, are all of the 404 Media co-founders, the first being Sam Cole.
Hello.
Emmanuel Mayberg.
Present.
And Jason Kevler.
Dude, I can't believe it. When is the last time we were all on a pod together?
It's been like a month at least.
It's been at least a month, easily.
Pre-anniversary.
Yeah. And speaking of anniversary, we are going to record our 1-year anniversary podcast special for paying subscribers only. We will get to that. It's just a lot of stuff came up, but we always appreciate your continued support, and we'll get to that soon. Breaking down what it's been like running a new independent tech investigation site for the past year, what we've learned, what's coming. I'm saying all this, but we haven't actually planned the podcast yet, so maybe it's going to be completely different, but I'm sure it'll all be good.
We'll also talk about why it's so late. We were snake bitten health-wise.
Not literally, but nearly, yeah.
I was bitten by a snake.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
All right, but for this episode, we've got like a few stories about opting in, opting out, the lack of the opt-out. I don't know, a lot of opting in various different directions. And the first being one written by Jason. Massive e-learning platform Udemy gave teachers a Gen AI opt-out window. It's already over. Very interesting words, opt-out window. Haven't really heard of that before. I guess, first of all, Jason, just what is Udemy for those who don't know?
Udemy is this online class platform. Like basically, they call themselves like an e-learning platform, but essentially anyone can become an instructor there and upload classes, and then you pay for the classes more or less. And there's like a rev split. It's one of the biggest in the world. Like they have something like 70,000 instructors, and they have like hundreds of thousands of classes. I think it's very popular for its like coding stuff, but there's also classes on like anything that you can possibly think of. There's a lot of like web design classes. There's a lot of like how to do digital art classes, how to use Photoshop, so on and so forth. And I don't know if it's the biggest in the world, but it's definitely like among the biggest. It's worth more than $1 billion. It has like hundreds of employees, and it's a big deal in this space.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it come up, especially sort of in InfoSec and cybersecurity, that sort of thing. So there's this big platform. All of these crucially human teachers and human instructors are making their own course content and teaching people online. Well, Udemy has this plan around generative AI. What were those plans exactly, or as much as we know about them anyway?
Yeah, so back in July, they like seemingly every other company announced that they were going to like have a generative AI program. Um, it's kind of unclear. Like Udemy has been very transparent about this and yet very vague at the same time. I feel like a lot of companies have just launched generative AI stuff and have opted people into it, and there's not been a big lead up to it. Whereas Udemy had like a webinar for instructors where they could learn about this. They also published like an ethics statement, more or less. They published like a frequently asked questions. Like they did publish a lot of stuff, but almost all of this happened on its own community platform. But basically, they told instructors that they are going to train an AI model on the instructors' classes. It is not clear like what they're going to do with this AI model. Like they say that they're going to offer personalization to users, but they have said that they do not intend to offer AI generated classes, as in like Udemy does not intend to create new classes that are entirely generated by AI. But they also reserve the right to do that. So it's like
Kind of meaningless then.
yeah,
Like, we're not doing it
yeah.
right now.
So,
but we
I mean,
might.
I think that like most of the instructors are very worried that they're going to train on their classes and then they're going to launch AI generated classes that compete with the human taught classes, more or less.
Right. Yeah, that would be
Like that's the
obviously-
big fear. Yeah.
it would be very, very concerning. So, well, you said they made all these announcements, but it sounds like it was more, as you say, sort of on the community platform or Udemy's forum, something like that. Maybe not everybody is seeing those. Were people opted in by default? And then we'll get to the window part, but was it opt-in by default?
It was opt-in by default, as will probably be the theme of this episode. But like many other platforms, they say, okay, like, you know, we're putting you in this program. Here's how it works. They also crucially said, like, if you opt out of this program, you will not benefit from whatever AI things that they end up launching. And it's still unclear what this is going to be or how people are going to benefit. But they make it very clear that people... I read it as a veiled threat. Like, I basically read it as, like, if you do not opt in or if you opt out, people have a harder time finding your classes. Like, that is more or less what they told people. Like, they really heavily incentivize people to not opt out by saying, like, you're probably going to make less money from our platform if you opt out of this.
Right. Which is
Yeah.
obviously very, very concerning to people who, even if they're not making their entire living off it, which they might be, they're at least generating income from this. And the platform is just potentially undermining that, or at least some sort of veiled threat, as you said. So people I won't say opted in, I'll say they're enrolled in the program by default. Udemy then gives this opt-out window. Like, what exactly is that?
I mean, it's exactly what it sounds like. So like on August 21st, they said, okay, the opt-out window is open, meaning if you don't want to be part of this program, go into your settings and click opt-out. So that opened August 21st. And then on September 12th, that window closed. And basically, if you did not opt out by September 12th, which was 3 weeks ago, you cannot opt out until sometime next year. And even though Udemy has done a lot of posts about this, like on its forum, people that I spoke to said that they didn't get emails about this opt-out window, that it was kind of like, well, if you were very active on the platform and were like logging in, you probably would have seen something. But a lot of people have created classes and then they leave it up there and people can take the classes at any point. So it's not something where you meet at 7 p.m. every Tuesday. It's like they're self-guided classes. And so people make the classes, they put them on this platform, and then they leave them there and they passively collect income from it. And if you're not like part of the Udemy community, if you're not actively keeping up, it was very easy to miss out on this. And so basically it's like once that date passed, you had a grayed out option. Like it was totally gray. You could not change the option. You can't opt out. And I also saw an email where someone was mad about this, like an instructor was mad about it and said, hey, I want to opt out now. And they said, well, you missed the opt out window. You cannot do it.
I have never heard of this. And maybe that's because it is specifically about generative AI and AI models and that sort of thing. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. I'm just wondering if like maybe this is a new thing we have to deal with. But I think it's absolutely wild that there's a window at all. But Udemy did give you some sort of actual explanation for why this is the case, albeit incredibly unusual. Like, what was the reason they gave for we're only going to do opt-outs at certain periods?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that this reminds me of is like healthcare enrollment, like open enrollment, where you have a 2-week period or 3-week period where you can change healthcare plans. And if you miss that, you kind of like have to forever hold your peace till the next opt-out or open enrollment period. And that's kind of the model that this looks like. So Udemy says that basically it is too time consuming and expensive for them to be retraining their model constantly. And I find this to be very interesting. One, it's kind of absurd because they're taking these professors, these instructors' classes and training it on them. And you should be able to decide at any point, like, hey, I don't want my stuff in there. But what they're basically saying is like, it is really hard for us to go in and delete this data. And it's easier for us to do this all at once, one time per year, than it is for us to, every time someone says, hey, stop training on my stuff, to go in and delete that. And I mean, they've taken some flack for this since I published the article. And I think that's right. But at the same time, this raises a lot of questions for me, like about other companies, because a lot of other companies say you can opt out of AI training, but what does that mean? Like, are they going in and are they deleting things that they have already trained on? And if so, how often are they doing that?
Or are they just not doing it? Like, but Udemy is or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, like Udemy says that they are going to go out and delete the data that it's already been trained on once per year. But I would imagine that a lot of other companies are saying, like, once we've scraped your data, you can opt out of future training where like new content is being trained or scraped rather. But we are not going to go back and delete what we already have. And, you know, there's like a couple, like I'm not aware of any company that really promises to delete data. The closest thing that I can think of is Leon 5B that Sam reported on, where there was a lot of child sexual abuse material in this massive large language model. And once Sam reported that, they took the model down and they like quote unquote cleaned it and they retrained the model. And it took like 9 months or something like that, right? Right, Sam? Like, what was the specifics there?
Yeah, it took them a long time just because it was, you know, it's not a simple thing to do to just say, I'm going to delete the abusive material. But yeah, you're right. That's the only similar thing I can think of.
And then there's like a couple academic papers that I looked at, and I think Emmanuel has maybe written about a couple of these or at least looked at them before. But I found it very interesting that there's a few academic papers where researchers are trying to do large language model unlearning, where basically they train the model to not output stuff that is like undesirable, more or less. And this is usually talked about in the context of like racism, sexism, like, you know, terms of service violations, things like that. But unlearning is different than deletion and different than retraining altogether. Like, as I understand it, unlearning is where you teach the language model to not output this stuff, but that doesn't mean that it's not still in there. And from what I can understand, unlearning is easier, like less expensive and less time consuming to do than fully retraining a model from scratch. But I don't know for sure. Like, I think this is one of the big problems with generative AI, where it's pretty hard to get stuff out of there once it's already in.
The difference is that with unlearning, which the reason people are researching this, I think, and the examples that they often show in research is for copyright reasons, right? So if you're using Stable Diffusion and you wanted to now produce an image of Harry Potter or something, it would be great for whoever makes the model if you could cheaply unlearn Harry Potter from the model. But the reason it's easy is that you're not going back and changing the data that you put into the model. The model is already trained, and in the same way that we've reported many times that you can train a model to do specific things, you're essentially trying to train it to not do something. But from what I've seen, and I looked at a bunch of these papers, like none of the methods are perfect, and people always find ways to pull that stuff out of it because it's in the data set. And in order to really have it not be in there, it has to be removed from the data set, which, as we know, because of the Lion 5B example, it's much harder, especially with a large data set like Lion 5B, to go back to it and remove specific things and then retrain the model. Like with Lion 5B, it took them months before, like they took the model down, and then it took, 6 months to put it back up. A much more expensive, time-consuming process.
Did they ever detail what that process actually involved? Because they were removing CSAM material, right? Was it ever said publicly, like, we went in and found all the CSAM one by one and removed it? Like, was that ever disclosed? Or
They did. They wrote a really long, detailed, like, company blog about it. It was tricky because if you just removed the offending stuff, you would end up with a roadmap to the offending stuff in the data sets people already have. So it's like you could just kind of match the difference.
right.
So it's a much more complicated process than just like deleting and republishing. But yeah, it's like 5,000 words on their site. It's a complicated process involving a lot of math that I'm not even going to attempt to summarize.
I think it's also tricky because they had to because it's an open source thing, they have to teach other people how to remove it because the data set has been copied.
Yeah.
Right. So very complicated, very difficult once you're scraped and you're in a large data set, very hard to remove you.
Yeah. So, I mean, this problem wouldn't necessarily exist with Udemy, which is, training presumably a closed source model that it controls. But that said, it's like we don't know that much about how often, like OpenAI trains new models. Obviously they have like GPT-4 and GPT-4.0, et cetera. And those are like big steps forward, like in between these individual releases. But I don't really know like how often OpenAI, for example, is updating these large language models. Like, I don't know if it only does it when it has a big new release, or if it's making like incremental changes much more often, and what those look like, and if things are being removed from it. And I think that that's like one of the big questions about large language models in general is how often are they updated? Like, we don't really know, or at least I don't. Maybe there's like technical papers and things that do talk to this more often, but it's not something that is common knowledge, I don't think.
So when it comes to this idea of an opt-out window where you have the 3 weeks or whatever, or some point in the year or whatever it is, do you think we might see more of that just as more companies are developing generative AI in general?
I think we need to see how this goes, because after I wrote this article, a bunch of people raised the question about whether this is compliant with the right to be forgotten in the European Union, for example, where you are basically allowed to opt out of or ask a company to delete information about you at any point.
Yep.
And whether this is compliant with that law, I have no idea. And Udemy does operate internationally, and so I think it's something we could see more of. But people seem pretty upset about this, and understandably so, in my opinion. So I guess we'll see kind of like if Udemy sticks down this road or if it changes its policy, says, like, oh, we heard you, we'll train more often, something like that. But yeah, I really don't know because I simply don't know whether Udemy is just saying, hey, we only want to do this once a year because it's annoying for us, or whether it is actually very expensive, actually very time consuming. It's not super clear to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up the right to be forgotten. And when I read the article, I was just like, how is this possibly legal to have an opt-out window? And I know that's me as a European with that perspective. But yeah, it really, really stood out to me. We'll leave that there. But when we come back, we're going to run through a couple of other stories also about opting in or opting out and sharing data without knowledge and all of that sort of thing from PayPal and LinkedIn as well. And that's not even all of the stories we did about this. We're just going to do those. We'll be right back after this.
Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. I've got a Lumen, and first of all, it's really easy to set up and use. Every morning, I breathe into it to learn whether my body is mostly burning fats or carbs. With that data, Lumen gives me a personalized nutrition plan based on how my body is working that day. I also use it before a workout to learn if I need to fuel up, and before or after exercise or eating to see how my body is working. Lumen has helped me understand my metabolism, showing me how my body turns the food I eat into fuel. And it's helping me work toward increasing my energy levels, feeling better during a workout, and even sleeping better. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/404media to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/404media to get 15% off your purchase. Thanks, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. When we launched 404 Media, I knew we wanted to sell merch, but I had no idea how to set up a store. Then I found Shopify, and now you can buy those beautiful green hats that we made. Setting up and managing our store was so easy because we use Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify's there to help you grow. Whether you're delivering daily digests or serving sensational scoops, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, up to 36% better compared to the other leading commerce platforms. And you can sell more with less, thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify integrates with every other software we use, meaning I can seamlessly print shipping labels, track orders, and manage our entire 404 Media store from just one platform. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Check out shopify.com/media to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. That's shopify.com/media. This episode of the 404 Media Podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. I've made it a personal goal to always be learning. As adults, it's so easy to get stuck in a rut and lose that curiosity we had as kids. So I'm always seeking out new hobbies that keep me on my toes, stuff like surfing and learning new languages, meeting new people. A few years ago, I found therapy, and I realized it could help keep myself open to new experiences. I'm someone who struggled a lot with anxiety, and therapy has really helped me understand my body and my mind, and it's really taught me coping skills for working through stressful situations. One thing I really like is it's helped me see the joy in trying new things, not just the anxiety it can bring. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. BetterHelp is entirely online, convenient, and flexible, so it fits really nicely into busy schedules. Fill out a questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/404 to get 10% off your first month today. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/404. BetterHelp.com/404.
All right, and we are back. Sam wrote this one. PayPal opted you into sharing data without your knowledge. So Sam, what was the change here exactly, and how did you find it?
Yeah, so PayPal introduced this feature / setting called personalized shopping, which I had never heard of until I saw someone flagging it on Twitter. And it's kind of deep inside of your settings on PayPal, where it says that it will let PayPal share products, offers, and rewards you might like with participating stores. And you can toggle that feature on and off. So it's basically toggling the permission to share. It says it's sharing products and offers, but really what they're sharing is your personal data. And they launched this without any kind of fanfare. I don't have any communications from PayPal about it. People online were saying they hadn't heard of it before, so it's a little bit sneaky on their part, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's weirdly vague, while also trying to be transparent with having the little setting and saying, "Here's what we're doing." It doesn't actually really tell you what it's doing, but basically sharing data about your purchases potentially with other retailers. And as a company that sits in a very, very privileged position as basically a payment processor, that's pretty concerning and pretty weird, to be honest. We verified it was already opted in by default, right? Like, how did you do that? Did you check your account or?
I checked my account. I also made a new account and checked it. It was definitely already turned on. Lots of people were talking about and posting screenshots on Twitter about how it was turned on for them. So it's very strange to me. And I mean, I guess it shouldn't be that strange considering the world that we're living in, but and all the things that we just talked about. But it's strange to me to have it opted in for you, to have that feature at all, to have a little toggle and then say, we're giving you the option, but we're not going to tell you have the option, and we're going to opt you in automatically. Something else that was interesting that was happening with this was, since we were just talking about Windows, opt-in Windows, there was a line when I first checked my settings that said, what did it say? It was like, we'll use the info collected about you after November 27th, 2024. And then I was like, well, that's a weird thing to say. We'll use it after November 27th. We're going to collect the data after the 27th. We're only going to use it after that point. It's like, what does that mean? So I emailed PayPal and I was like, hey, what does this mean? If you opt out after November 27th, what happens to your data? Obviously, they're not going to go in and remove it. They have a clause in their policy that says we can't control what these other merchants do with that data. And they didn't reply, and that was more than 24 hours ago. But they did remove that line. So, it's like, what was the purpose of that line exactly?
I love it when companies do this.
I love it too. It's so funny.
When you reach out for comment and they never get back to you, but they change the exact thing you were asking about. It's good.
Yeah, they're like, that they're forwarding this. They've like created a bunch of tickets. They're like, get this line off the page. And then, I mean, that was weird. And then the privacy statement link in that page, in that settings page, is a different URL than the privacy setting or the privacy statement that you can get to from anywhere else on PayPal. And that URL said, like the slug was like preview November 27th, 2024 or something. It's like, why? What is going on here?
So they like publish their drafts or something?
Yeah, I guess. It's so strange. But that link is still what you see if you're on that settings page. So anyway, mysteries abound. PayPal has still not replied. So I don't know. People were pissed off. It's something that no one likes being, chosen for. You should at least give people the heads up or the option if you're going to give them the choice. And a lot of people in the EU and other countries were saying that they don't have the setting at all. So,
right, as in, it's not that they can't opt out. It's just like this isn't even a thing.
No, yeah,
Right,
exactly.
right. And I mean, just to briefly bounce off something you said about, I can't remember exactly, but like, is this actually weird or not? That's what I remember. But like, what is going on with all of these companies? We've covered like 3 or 4 doing really, really weird automatically opt-in stuff. And it's just like, did everybody decide to do it in the past 2 weeks? I don't know.
Yeah, people were really
weird.
pissed off about LinkedIn, which we can get into. But
Yeah, exactly.
no, like for good reason, people were mad about this. Do you want to
Exactly.
kind of go into the LinkedIn story? Because that was a hot one.
Yeah. So this was actually a little while ago, I think before we recorded the last episode. It was almost like a little throwaway story, but bringing it in here because, as I said, all of these companies doing this. But basically, the long and the short of it is that LinkedIn was using its users' data for improving the site's generative AI, but we found it hadn't actually updated its terms of service yet, like its privacy policy, that sort of thing. This was again found by various users of the social network, and they were posting screenshots of the settings and where you could turn it off and all of that sort of thing. I just reported up with some context and got a statement from LinkedIn and that sort of thing. Before I get into that, a LinkedIn AI, I don't want anything to do with that. Just like Gen AI built
gross.
on like Thinkfluencer lists and like B2B marketing strategy. I think people talk about AI being like a danger to humanity. I think that's the one we need to be like scared of. The LinkedIn AI. You don't know what's going to happen with that. But the quote from LinkedIn on its site was, well, this is like the dialogue. Can LinkedIn and its affiliates use your personal data and content you created on LinkedIn to train generative AI models that create content? It asked. And then there was another line that said, use my data for training content creation AI models. And you could flick it off and on. Crucially, it was enabled by default, as I'm sure we've probably established by now. As I said, I reached out to LinkedIn to ask, what's going on here? You know, why are people opted in by default? And why have you not updated your privacy policy or terms of service to reflect this at all? And they basically gave me the corporate equivalent of, I'm sorry, I'm trying to delete it, which is they said, we're doing it shortly. And I don't know, maybe you should do that first before you start training on people's data. I don't know. Similar to the PayPal stuff, they say they're not doing it on users in Europe generally either. So there's obviously something going on there. But yeah, I don't know what is going on with these companies, but just a series of really, really strange, frankly, some of them shitty decisions on automatically enrolling their users into various practices. And I don't know, I guess we're probably going to see more of this as well as more companies get into generative AI and all of that as well.
One thing that I have not told y'all, or maybe I did long ago, but back when we were at Motherboard, LinkedIn's kept adding all of these AI features into LinkedIn where it would write your posts for you, etc. And so I was doing a stunt because I didn't use LinkedIn at the time, and I only use it now because we have our own company, and I'm like, well, we need to promote on all platforms, but I didn't use LinkedIn then. So I was asking ChatGPT to generate LinkedIn lunatic style posts about our articles. Yeah. And so for like a few weeks, I just would dump links into ChatGPT and say, write me a LinkedIn post for this article. And the posts were really bad, but they were like I got quite a lot of engagement from it. And because we quit Vice and started a new company, I never ended up writing that article. But my first like 30 LinkedIn posts are all written by ChatGPT. It's the only thing like I've ever really used it for, and it was for this stunt.
Two things on that. Did it include like the emojis that people love to use on LinkedIn? You're nodding your head.
Yeah, every like it was like 5 paragraphs each of them were like 5 bullet points, and they all had different emojis. I have some pulled up now, and like, for example, you wrote an article about hackers that could remotely open smart garage doors. So the post that I wrote was the Drudge siren, like police siren. Security alert, smart garage doors vulnerable to hackers. I just came across this eye-opening article from Vice highlighting a major security flaw in smart garage doors from Nex, a popular garage door manufacturer, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, here are the key takeaways. And then it has the little 1, 2, 3 emojis.
Uh-huh.
And then at the end, the takeaway, which is also part of the LinkedIn lunatic type post, is, as we increasingly rely on IoT and smart devices, let's not forget the importance of robust security measures. Share this article with your network to raise awareness, and let's keep our homes and communities safe. #smart home, #IoT security, #cybersecurity, #garage door security.
I love
2
that.
likes.
Well, I thought you said you got a ton of engagement, but
that one they didn't like. Some of the others, yeah. And then Katie Drummond, who was our boss at the time and is now at Wired, said, "Thank you for sharing this important article on smart garage door vulnerabilities. As your boss, I appreciate your commitment to staying informed about cybersecurity risks and keeping our team and organization informed. Let's continue to prioritize strong security measures to protect companies and clients."
Was that with AI as well? It's kind of
was that ChatGPT? Okay.
Yeah, so she was commenting on all of mine with ChatGPT responses, and that was part of what the article was going to be. But then we didn't stay there. I bring this up just because LinkedIn is pushing AI super hard, and that's why I thought that these like LinkedIn lunatic AI generated posts would maybe do well there as a stunt, as a joke to see what was going on. And Joe, I know you use LinkedIn a fair bit, or like you post our articles
only because
there.
I have to, because we're trying to run a media company.
Yeah. But I don't know if you've noticed, but I think that's one of the only social media platforms that has like a built-in, we will write your posts for you with AI, like in the post editor. It's pretty wild how like integrated it is.
Yeah, they actively encourage you to do it. And I mean, the new Apple Intelligence, I know it's slightly different, but that's going to have that baked in, right? Whereas you can generate images like directly in iMessage or whatever it is now. So like it's getting closer and closer to you as a user experience all the time. I find it funny that you've made LinkedIn posts with ChatGPT. Now, those are going to be ingested into LinkedIn's own AI, and then it's going to be used to make even more. So it's like a very weird cycle where we could just poison the LinkedIn data set by going full on LinkedIn lunatic. You know, we could really push it to the edge. The last thing I'll say, LinkedIn, very interesting social network. The engagement I get on a lot of my posts are people asking questions where they're clearly trying to bait me into responding. And you don't get on any other social network. It's just like, what do you think this means for security? I don't know, mate. Like, what? Please stop asking me. Just read the article. I don't know. This is a weird place. But yeah, definitely a strange social network. And we'll see how it is when it's completely overrun with AI. That's going to be great. All right. We will leave that there. If you are listening to the free version of the podcast, I will now play us out. But if you are a paying 404 Media subscriber, we're going to talk about a pretty scary, I guess, side effect of the autonomous Waymo vehicles, or a weird attack vector. I mean, Sam is going to explain it to us. You can subscribe and gain access to that content at 404media.co. As a reminder, 404 Media is journalist-founded and supported by subscribers. If you wish to subscribe to 404 Media and directly support our work, please go to 404media.co. You'll get unlimited access to our articles and an ad-free version of this podcast. You'll also get to listen to the subscribers-only section, where we talk about a bonus story each week. This podcast is made in partnership with Kaleidoscope. Another way to support us is by leaving a 5-star rating and review for the podcast. That stuff really helps us out. This has been 404 Media. We will see you again next week.